Hi, everybody. Claudia Glassman here with Mighty Oak Parenting. When I was a therapist working with children and adolescents, and I did a lot of work with children in trauma. So, a lot of kids that have just been through, a lot of horrible experiences. And so, a lot of what I would have to do in therapy was what we call in therapy terms holding the space. And it's really kind of goes against my instinct of feeling the need to do things all the time, and required me to just sit with my clients and let them let it out, and to offer them a non-judgmental, safe place where they could just cry, yell, scream, tell me their story, whatever they needed to do. And I gave them the space to do so without fixing problems or judging them or correcting them or telling them how they should feel, right? Or doing any of these things to kind of change anything. And I just let it come out. Now, there's a time and a place to hold space, and there's a time and a place to kind of shift things along. And as you go through a therapy process with, working with kids, you kind of navigate that. But this aspect of holding the space was so important, just to allow these children, and a lot of kids I worked with were in foster care, so they didn't necessarily have anyone in their environment who could do this for them or who they trusted to do this for them. And so it was such an important part of therapy. So now as a parent, I find that this is just so important to utilize with my kids too. Thankfully, my children aren't in foster care and they have parents. And as their parent, I sometimes have to hold the space for them. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means and what that looks like. And so essentially, when we're holding the space for someone, we're just sitting with them, right? So your child is in a lot of emotional pain, how to, fight with a friend, whatever the case may be, and they're coming to you. And as parents, we so badly want to fix things and we want to make it right. And sometimes we do things like tell them they shouldn't feel a certain way because we don't want them to feel that way, right? Not because it's not okay for them to feel that way, but just because we wish it was different. And so as parents, sometimes we have to fight our urge. And that's why I wanted to do a post on this, because we like to fix and we like to prevent our children from feeling any form of hurt. And we want to make it better and we want to make it go away. But sometimes when we do that, we isolate our children more, and we're not teaching them when we do that how to sit with those emotions, how to really feel them, how to identify them, and how to, move through them. And we live in a society where we're really great at distracting, right? We're really good at, getting on our phones or finding other ways to kind of stuff our feelings. We eat, we drink, we do drugs as a society, we escape, we do all these things, right? But we really struggle to sit. And so one of those most valuable lessons we can potentially teach our kids is to sit with their emotions. And we can do that by doing that with them. So the first thing we really want to do is listen, and not just with our ears, but with our heart. You really want to allow your child to just express what they have to express and feel that and be there with them and listen deeply. The second thing we want to do is we really want to just sit with them, just be with them, not judging, not letting our own stuff take over, but to really just sit in sometimes those really icky feelings. And it's hard for us, which gets me to the next point. Really important for us to keep our own things in check. Sometimes our kids come home and maybe they're telling you a story about another child at school and they're crying. And you remember when you went to school and you had a similar incident, someone bullied you or whatever the case may be, and it starts to cause those feelings to come back for you. And so it's really important when we are going to be containers and hold this space for our children that we do that for them and that we put our stuff aside for a later time, because we're there to hold their hand. And they're not there to hold ours in that moment, right? But it's also why it's really important for us as adults to have a support network so that we too can have people to lean on to hold space for us when we feel overwhelmed and we need it. We also really want to stay compassionate. So sometimes when someone's emitting a lot of emotions, maybe they made a bad decision, right? Maybe they did a behavior or an action that we don't really condone or approve with. But it's really important to do what we call in therapy, keeping the client in positive regard, which is basically unconditional positive regard, which is essentially, remaining compassionate, remaining understanding, remaining positive about the person, even though, or despite what they did or what they're saying or what they're doing, right? And I find it really helpful to do this by looking at the whole person. So nobody is defined by like the one action or the one thing they said or the one emotion they're feeling, right? We're so much more than that. And so that is something that takes time. But if we don't have this positive regard for one another and for our children, then it's really easy to let that negativity creep in and we start to see everything our kids do as negative. And as we all know, that is not the case, right? One negative behavior does not define an entire person. And sometimes we forget to remember that. So we really want to do that. And then most important thing when we're kind of holding the space for our children is to just sit and not fix things. And that's kind of the key. We don't want to fix emotions. We don't want to fix the problem. We don't want to problem solve or guide or teach or use this as a really good learning experience, right? There's plenty of time in parenting that we can teach and guide and problem solve with our children. When they're highly emotionally overwhelmed and in pain, emotional pain, it's not really the time for that. What they need is to give that and share that with someone else who can handle it. And one of the most amazing things we can do as parents is sometimes just handle it, because your child, when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're coming to you with this emotional pain and you can handle it, they will continue to come to you at 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, whatever the case, right? And in those times when they really need you, and there won't be a fear of punishment and consequence based on what they're sharing with you, because in those holding moments, you're just there non-judging, right? And there's a later time to process and kind of talk a little bit more about the issues that come up in those moments if you need to. But when someone's really emotionally overwhelmed, really just to sit with them, if you can imagine yourself just holding their hand through it, right? And being present. And that is a parenting tool that I think is so underrated. And we do it. I mean, I'm sure you have done it before. But I just wanted to highlight this kind of component of parenting because I really want us to be more aware and maybe do it a little more often so that our children feel supported and learn how to feel their feelings. And sometimes the best way through a feeling is just to be with it and move through it. So I hope you guys can, be a little more mindful and try that maybe a little bit more often. And if you're like me, you've got to fight that urge to fix things. That's good for us too. We can't always fix our children's problems. It's really good training for those moments that we don't have an option, right? And then our children don't expect us to always fix it. And they can learn to just experience life the way it is and not always have this fix if it's not possible. So just a little bit of food for thought for today. And I will definitely be in touch with you guys soon with another video and some more information. Have a great day.